I've been in and out of government. I spent 16 years in the government and 16 years out of the government. Do I prefer being in the government, making policy that I believe in? Yeah. My wife doesn't like it very much. So I would probably have been in the government longer if it weren't for the fact that I wouldn't still be in my first marriage. My name is Tom Scully. I'm at Senior Counsel at Alston & Bird, which is a big Atlanta-based law firm, probably 750 lawyers based in Atlanta. We have about 150 in Washington, and I run the healthcare practice in Washington, which is about 15, 16 people. And I do that half-time, and I'm a partner in an investment firm in New York the other half of my time, where we invest mainly in healthcare companies. So I've been doing healthcare policy for probably 30 years. So almost everything I do basically is trying to figure out hospitals, healthcare policy compared to services, nursing homes, hospitals, dialysis clinics, doctor practices, things like that. So, and in the Washington role, we represent a ton of different healthcare companies, again, a ton of hospitals, insurance companies, dialysis centers, imaging facilities, just about anything you can think of in healthcare, we represent one of them someplace. Well, there are two types of lobbyists in Washington. When I first started out at a law school, I hate to admit, 28 years ago, I was at Aiken Gump, which is one of the bigger law firms in town. Probably the two biggest lobbying law firms in Washington are probably Aiken Gump and Patton Boggs. So I started my career out of law school at Aiken Gump, and later on I was a partner at Patton Boggs. And they are probably, and they're great law firms, but they tend to be more the traditional door opening access lobbying. But I think there are door openers that basically are relationship people that raise a lot of money and just kind of make sure if you're a company from Cleveland and you need your access to explain your issue to your congressman or your senator, which I think is a legitimate function. A lot of people do that. Long ago, I decided I liked the substantive side better, so I spent a lot more time on details. So people generally don't hire me or us to do door opening for their senators or to get to know their congressmen. They generally hire us because we know the policy really well. Hopefully we know that most of the people that worked here worked either in the Senate or the House or one of the agencies, and so they understand the process. But they're much more likely to get into the weeds of how kidney dialysis works or how a hospital gets reimbursed in North Carolina for, why a hospital in Charlotte has a problem with payment and how it gets fixed, that kind of thing. People need advocates, and whether you're an advocate in a courtroom because you're getting sued, or you're an advocate because you're trying to get a radio station license in the FCC, whether you're an advocate because you're a hospital and you're trying to make the argument and because you're in Memphis that your hospital is taking care of all these indigent care people and it needs more subsidies, people have a right to petition the government. And sometimes they do it through a courthouse, and sometimes they do it through the Federal Communications Commission, and sometimes they do it through Congress. And you can't expect some guy from Memphis, I did a lot of work with the poorest hospital in Memphis, the Med, which is a low-income hospital, when I was in the government. Can't expect somebody from Memphis to show up and understand how to deal with their congressmen and their senators and the agencies. And so just like you'd hire somebody if you got sued in the courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia, you hire somebody in Washington who lives this stuff every day and knows, if you've got a problem with, health care, you go to certain committees and certain people. And you generally would probably hire people that have worked with those people over the years, which is no different than advocacy anywhere else. I have a company I represent that makes diabetes pumps, very unique diabetes pumps. Technically, if you know what an insulin pump is, it's a mechanical pump that's a piece of metal that's on your belt. Well, this company invented a new diabetes pump that basically has a handheld little device, and it's a disposable pump that you throw away every 3 days. Okay, so you have a little thing you move around your belt. It's taken over the kids' juvenile diabetes market because kids can swim with it. They don't have to have a pump on their belt. They can move around their body. They have a patch. Well, these guys can't get Medicare to pay for it, and the reason is under the law, technically Medicare doesn't pay for disposables. So I went into Medicare, made all the arguments, met with the staff. They said, you know what, this is a great product. Seniors would love to have it. Works great for kids. We agree with you. It's fabulous. Only one problem. The statute says we don't pay for anything that's disposable. And the pump it's a very unusual, fabulous product. You know, and if it costs the same or less than the old mechanical pump you got on your belt, by all accounts, it's a better product. Just so happens the statute says Medicare pays for durable medical equipment, not disposable medical equipment. So there's a good example. So what do? You know, the companies in Massachusetts, I've been talking to Senator Kerry's staff, I've been talking to the agency staff likes it. It's going to be a long process, may take 6 months, may take 2 years, I don't know. But going through the staff and educating about this product and why it should be paid for, it's not going to cost the government any more. Companies based in Massachusetts, talking to the delegation, getting them to support it. You know, this kind of stuff happens. There's no rational reason why this thing shouldn't be paid for, except an old statute said Medicare doesn't pay for anything that's disposable. So the first effort was to go into CMS, which is Medicare, and see if there was some way they could interpret the statute to cover this, which I still think there is. But if you read it by the book, historically, there's no precedent for it. You know, I think legally they could do this, and we're still in the process of doing that. But as a backup, if Medicare can't find a way to pay for it, even though they think it's a great product, we're going to have to go to Congress and say, look, we need a little technical fix. Well, you know, passing any healthcare legislation is incredibly difficult because it becomes a freight train. So it's very hard to say. You know, there's usually one bill every couple of years, and this one just passed, and there may not be another one for a while. So going in and saying, oh, we need a little fix, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It's a fact of life. People follow the incentives they have, and you know, there are people that's, you know, members of Congress have to raise money to get reelected. And the guy that shows up raised a lot of money for you, you're probably going to meet with him. But I also think equally, if not more so, people value substance. And I don't know of any member of Congress that's worth a damn in either party that if you come in with a bad argument, it's going to help you. So whether it's your hospitals or your nursing homes, and people help their constituents. So if you're from North Carolina or California, you're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time worrying or helping somebody from Indiana. You're going to help the guy from your district. And if he comes in with a crappy argument, you're not going to help him anyway. So, you know, what a lobbyist really is nothing more than a lawyer or a representative or, you know, somebody who comes in and crafts your argument and helps you to go get your member of Congress, your senators to build an argument and fix whatever your problem is. I don't think there's any shame in representing people and making a good argument. So the idea that somehow being a lobbyist is evil, you know, I know some lobbyists in town, I've known for years, who basically don't know the substance around their clients, and their whole practice is based about fundraising. There are plenty of people who do that. That's not my preference. I've avoided that for a long time. That's a small minority. If you went around and looked at who the lobbyists are that are specialists, you know, there are 25 or 30 people that do healthcare, you know, practices of people that do healthcare specific substance like I do. Probably another 25 or 30 if you had a problem at the FAA, if you're an airline, you know, that you go hire them, you know, pick your issue. So let's say if you're a farmer and you got a problem in Nebraska with your corn stuff and you got to go to the agriculture committee, I would have no clue how to do that, but there's probably 25 people who could do that for you. And they know all about the ag programs, they know who to go see. And I think that's, you know, perfectly legitimate. I grew up exactly the opposite. The world wasn't quite as cynical back then. When I was in college, I wanted to work in Washington and be in the government and maybe be in lobbying because I thought it was interesting, and it's all about making policy. So I think it's gotten a much worse image over the years. And do I think it's right or fair? I think it's, you know, uneducated largely. I mean, are there some lobbyists out there that are doing stuff that don't think is great? Maybe, but I think the vast bulk of people are basically into the little substantive silos that they deal with most of the time.